Good evening, viewers. I'm Frank Makanui, your host for this edition of Election Focus. Welcome to the show. In this edition of the Election Focus, we will speak on the issues of governance and institution, and we will speak with two academics from the National Research Institute. Dr. Henry Okole comes from the East New Britain province. He's presently a senior research fellow on governance and institutional issues at the National Research Institute of Papua New Guinea. Our next guest is Dr. Ray Anere from Milamboe Province, also a senior research fellow and acting head of political and legal studies in the National Research Institute. Dr. Okole and Dr. Anere, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
Dr. Okole, in our country where it seems we do have a very weak rule of law, does the free, fair and safe election really free, fair and safe?
Thanks, Frank. That's a very pertinent question that I think people are asking around the country, and because I think the election campaign was actually predicated on those that particular phrase. Really, it's something that is ideal for the country. There have been instances around the country otherwise that does not really show or demonstrate what was hoped for in this particular election. And I think it comes down to a number of factors. One, of course, is I think it's the issue of how the people accept this particular election. I mean, the case that people will go at any length to win at the polls is something that is adding pressure or bearing upon the process itself. Now, the issue really, it comes also to the implementation. It's the role really of the state to make sure that procedures or rules or laws are implemented for the sake of this process taking place. But as it can be seen now, there's a number of factors, particularly to do with human behavior, that is compromising the process. But I think looking ahead, it will be best that some of these things should be dealt with seriously and genuinely after the elections, during the post-election discussions.
Dr. Anere, do you share the same view?
Yes, I do. I share the view as Dr. Okole had articulated. The free, fair, safe election is, if you like, an ideal value that the state is promoting in the conduct of the 2012 elections. The reality speaks otherwise in the sense that candidates and voters and citizens generally don't always comply with the notion of free, fair and safe election. They do have self-interests, their desire for material things, including money, make them compromise that notion of free, fair, safe elections by accepting money and other material things from candidates. And so both on the part of candidates and on the part of voters or individuals, their behavior amounts to compromising to some degree, maybe even a significant degree, the notion of free, fair, safe election in this election.
Still preying on the premise that there is a weak rule of law. How about the voting behavior? Does it affect? You touched a little bit on this area. What are your views on that?
The voting behavior, it really depends, one, on the first point being that how the people really see this process. In other countries, people might think that what's the big deal? It's an election, we go through this every time. It means a lot to Papua New Guinea, and it is. It's been documented, and it's been like this, going back to independence or even the pre-independence years. The issue of a rule of law is really something that the people and the state must work together to make it a reality in life, for this country, because it's not really something that you are born with. You have to be taught and you have to accept these things. So the issue, like of the rule of law in this particular process, has to do with the elections, just like any other particular activity to do with the role of the state. It really has to be something that the people must accept and they have to live by to make sure that the state that is out there in existence to serve them really must uphold things like this, the rule of law, the rights of individuals or the citizens. It must be something that must be protected, but at the same time it must not be taken advantage of to the disadvantage of the population and the state as an institution.
I'm going to take you a little bit into the counting of the votes. Is there a justification in the votes being counted early in the Yalibu Pangia seat, considering that the incumbent, Mr. Peter O'Neill, is the current PM, he is the political party leader, and also a very hot potential candidate for Prime Minister? Is it fair? Dr. Ray?
Well, thank you. I guess there are both sides to the question. It may have an unfair advantage in the sense that his commanding lead at this point may influence the voting intentions of other voters who could either give their support to People's National Congress candidates or may not give their support to People's National Congress candidates, particularly in those electorates where voting is still to take place, and depending on their support or their liking for the People's National Congress. So those who are yet to vote may vote either way in relation to what they now know about the commanding lead on the part of the Mr. Peter O'Neill for the Yalibu Pangia seat. So that's in terms of the what you might say unfair advantage. Although we hear that there are no laws been broken, election rules been broken, given the fact that counting is taking place for that particular electorate.
Can I just add something? This particular issue has been raised by candidates, party leaders around the country, and it's to do with the issue of perception. But I think it's incumbent upon the Electoral Commissioner to explain, for the sake of for the public, this particular situation, because otherwise these lingering doubts and things like that might stay on and so forth, and it's not really good for the credibility of the process. So I think an explanation, perhaps the Electoral Commissioner might give an explanation at some point very soon.
We'll take a short break. We'll come back again with Election Focus. Welcome back. This is Election Focus, and we are speaking to Dr. Henry Okole and Dr. Ray Anery. Dr. Okole, can I take you back to August the 2nd, 2011? Mm-hmm. Was it the Prime Minister that was changed, or was it the government that changed?
Okay. I will go beyond your question, and I would like to highlight two particular trends or two particular things that I think can give a better perspective of the evolutions of the political events since August the 2nd, 2011. First, you have to look at a trend that has happened over time. It's to do with the way Parliament is, has operated, and the problems with Parliament, and particularly the way the increasing strength of the executive arm, that's been going on for about 15, 20 years prior to August last year. So there has been this issue with a weakening of a Parliament House itself and its processes over time. And secondly, there were issues to do with personalities, political parties and so forth, which is well documented in the country. So it's those two processes and how the two came together that was represented by a change of government, which became a precursor in itself for other events to take place that took place for the next 9 to 10 months leading to these particular elections, yes.
Dr. Anery, what about the Speaker's performance on the floor of Parliament? Did you, in your opinion, did he bring disrepute to the parliamentary process?
Well, I think the public perception is that the conduct of the Speaker had inevitably brought about significant degree of disrepute, if you will, to the integrity of the Parliament, both in the floor of Parliament, also outside of Parliament. And part of the reason is that the Speaker himself found himself caught up in the politics of power struggle, and that there were personality interests, there were partisan interests and other interests, if you will, that drove him to behave in the way that he did. And there was no way we could say that the behavior of the Speaker demonstrated neutrality or impartiality. If anything, it was way beyond that. He demonstrated behavior that signified taking sides with particular forces, particular actors, particular interests. And it was anything but neutrality or impartiality, which at the end of the day amounted to undermining the integrity of parliamentary process in general.
We are speaking, of course, of parliamentary process. During that period, legislations were made within 24 hours. Does that have an effect on the process itself, where the public and anyone else not allowed to contribute their thoughts on that particular amendment of the law, especially the laws on the NSC and the Prime Minister's Act? What are your thoughts, Dr. Okolle?
Yeah. When I responded to you earlier on, yes, there were some processes that have actually been compromised. I mean, presenting a bill on the floor of Parliament, there is normally given a certain period of time for such a bill to be debated and to be passed around, and that's the time when consultations can take place, if need be, with the public. But it would appear as if a lot of these processes were short-circuited during the time when Parliament, after the change of government on the 2nd of August last year. Now, that particular, the process by which it took place, of course, it came to bear on some of the things, and again, it came back to perception. It came back to what the questions that the public were asking. Why the rush? We are talking about a parliament here and a process that serves the people. Not the immediate parliamentarians who were within this process in the House of Parliament. So all of these things, it does bear upon the type of quality performance or good performance of Parliament that the people or the country really expects of this particular public institution. And of course, we've seen all of this, and people, even now after during the elections now, and will be the case after the elections, they'll be expecting something to be done about that. So that's something to look forward to.
Dr. Ray, in terms of governance, the three arms of the institution or three arms of the governing system, has it been breached, and what are the effects of the breach, if there are any?
Well, one of the defining features of a parliamentary democracy is the separation of powers between the three arms of government. I think we've seen on the part of the behavior of the caretaker government in the lead up to the elections and individual members of Parliament that the separation of powers principle had been ignored to the point that you could say it's been undermined when the executive arm of government failed to respect the decision of the Supreme Court on the legitimacy of the having Mr. O'Neill as the Prime Minister or his government. In that regard, I would say there was a violation of that principle of the separation of powers. In terms of the effect of that kind of behavior, it goes to show that our political leaders can go to great lengths to to shift the goalpost, if you will, when and where the shifting of the goalpost is would suit their interests, and that is dangerous in the interest of parliamentary democracy and the stability of parliamentary democracy, not to mention its integrity. It's dangerous when political actors shift the goalpost around to suit their interests and for their convenience.
Dr. Okole?
Yeah, I would like to add also that a lot of these things actually predated this, the issues to do with the three arms of the government, the separation of powers and so forth. There were some issues, there were cases also that demonstrate that these problems actually problems were there prior to the recent crisis or the current crisis. If you go back to 2000, for example, in 2000 it was well documented that the opposition had 9 members left, and they were not even united. They were not even united, so where is the credible opposition there to serve as the alternate government? In the meantime, the executive arm was expanding its own membership, And that requires some explanation, such as to what MPs really want on the floor of Parliament. And I think you and I, we both know why the MPs would behave like that. It's best to be on the government side, where it's easy access to ministries and resources, projects, and stuff like that. So it's been going on for some time. And the biggest danger for Papua New Guinea here is really that we've recognized the problem. Many people, including the MPs, lawmakers, or even lawyers and commentators, they knew this going back to the recent crisis, but nothing was done. And really, the big problem for Papua New Guinea is the issue of procrastination. Let's not deal with it now. Move it on to the next lot of people or MPs and so forth. So that's the danger for me.
Thank you, Dr. Okole. We will take a short break and be back with Election Focus. Welcome back. You're watching Election Focus. On tonight, our guests are Dr. Henry Okole and Dr. Ray Anere. Dr. Okole and Dr. Anere, let's round off our discussion with political party system. We have, it seems, over 40 political parties in our country. Is it good for the democracy? Dr. Ray?
All right, well, thank you. We have about 43 or so registered political parties, and the trend is that in the lead up to elections, we see an increase in the number of registered political parties, as we've seen in a previous election. On the question on whether the number of political parties that we have is good for democracy, I guess it depends on how one looks at it. The number of political parties that we have could be an indication that our democracy allows for freedom of association and expression by way of forming political parties to vie for the seat of government. On the other hand, in terms of political practice, we know that having a large number of political parties, and to the extent that those political parties engage in power struggles, they can disorientate the focus of Parliament in terms of focusing on its lawmaking business. They can make or break governments, as we've seen recently. So the number of political parties, and depending on the way they behave, particularly in power struggles, that can have destabilizing effects, not just on the party system, but also on the parliamentary process, and on the relations between the executive government and the parliament.
Yeah, I just want to add also that even political parties here in Papua New Guinea is seen as a vehicle used by politicians. It is really the responsibility also of the people to see that. It's one thing to sit back and complain. Part of the reason why political parties are formed, and as many as they are, is because they revolve around the dominance of personalities. And very often they are given goals, what these leaders want to do. They want to form the next government, or they want to get this or to get that, right? But if it becomes a party or parties that are supported by good public membership, really sizable ones, then it's easier to control with the power of the vote or the influence of the public membership the way the MPs behave, because part of the reason we also see a lot of political instability, a lot of things that the way the politics goes in Papua New Guinea, it's to do with what the MPs are aiming at. If the public membership, if the people themselves can guide the MPs, then perhaps we can also reduce the chances for the type of instability that we see here. So let me stress again, the public has got a role to play. They have to be, stand behind our political parties. The way we see things today, the political parties belong to the MPs, and they operate at this level. Come election time, as we are seeing now, when you go the way, if you look at the counting right now, there's a lot of independents out there too, who are just as appealing to voters as they are to candidates endorsed by political parties. And that's to do with the way the people vote. They vote for personalities, not so much political parties.
We could talk about all night. This is a very interesting subject, but we'll have to round off. So I'll ask Dr. Anere first. Your thoughts on the whole process from the change of government to the issuing of wreaths and campaigning and polling and to where we are and the next formation of government. What are your views?
Well, I think the experience from the time of the change of government up to now should teach us as a country and as a people that there are lessons that we need to consider, particularly the stability of Parliament, the stability of the executive arm of government, respect for the principle of separation of powers between the three arms of government, and as we've pointed out in this program, the need for citizens to take an active part in terms of ensuring the integrity of and the conduct of the members of the representatives by taking an active interest in what they do. So I think there are lessons that we need to take on board and use those lessons to see how we can improve and strengthen our parliamentary democracy in Papua New Guinea.
Dr. Okole, your thoughts?
Yeah, very briefly. What we've seen since over the last few years, and I've alluded to this, there really has to be some changes done in the next parliamentary term from 2012 to 2017 to make sure that some of these things do not happen again. And it's really the prerogative of the next government to do what it can to make sure that this is not repeated. And people have said that perhaps a precedents have been set. That precedent should not be repeated. Beyond that, it's very important also in the next parliamentary term, and I'm focusing on the next parliament here, because there are a number of key issues or key events taking place that some of them are unprecedented, that the next parliament must be geared towards addressing. This is not, I would say, not a normal or your ordinary parliamentary term. There's a lot of things. For example, I've alluded to this, changes have to be made. The impact of the LNG, at least at the start, would be felt in the next parliamentary term. Bogan will have a referendum after or sometimes between 2015 and 2020. And then you have all these issues of trying to accommodate two new provinces, Jiwaka and Hela. And all of this will come to bear on the way politics is played out, especially at the national level. And it requires some dedicated and visionary leadership to make sure that the next parliamentary term puts this country back on right course.
Thank you, Dr. Okole, and thank you, Dr. Anere, for your candid views on the whole process. Thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you, Frank, for having us on your program.
Likewise, thank you, Frank, for having us too.
Well, that's it, folks. Thank you for watching Election Focus. Until next Sunday, join me again. I'm Frank Makanui, and it's good night.